Okay. Oh my God, these seats.
We got
So-
instructions. So don't sit back.
So, the scholars, well, let me just say this. Yesterday, we talked a lot about what was at stake, and you already saw what, I mean, I just thought it was a raging madman who was speaking last night. But you see how important it is to really have an understanding. We are an education union, we are a healthcare union, we are a public services union. If our membership and our delegates don't have a deep understanding of what is against us and what the context is on all of these things, then how are we going to be able to have the conversations we need, whether they are in classrooms or whether they are in union halls? How do we have those conversations? We learn a lot, and frankly, I'm learning all the time, and one of the ways I'm learning is from scholars who I listen to and read and talk to all the time. And so what we have here today is a really remarkable group of people who are deeply involved in the work that is done on democracy and freedom and rights and civics. And so let me introduce them and then start asking them a bunch of questions. We're doing this for about 30 minutes, 30 or 40 minutes, I think. So let me introduce them, and then I'm going to go right into the questions, which is Erica Chenoweth, who is the person to my immediate left, is the Frank Stanton Professor of the First Amendment at Harvard Kennedy School. She's the faculty dean at Forheisem House at Harvard, the Susan S. and Kenneth Wallach Professor at Harvard's Radcliffe Institute. Erica studies political violence and its alternatives. They have authored or edited 9 other books and dozens of articles on mass movements, nonviolent resistance, terrorism, political violence, revolutions, and state repression. And one of the reasons I'm reading their bio instead of talking about it, yes, let's applaud Erica, is because I gush over these 4 people so much, I'd spend all the time gushing over them. Eric Holder, actually, let me do Danielle before Eric, because Danielle is to the immediate left of Erica. Danielle Allen is the James Bryant Conant University Professor at Harvard University. She is also director of the Allen Lab for Democracy Renovation at the Harvard Kennedy School and director of the Democratic Knowledge Project Learn, which is a research lab focused on civic education at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and she's doing tremendous work on civics. And then there is our former Attorney General, Eric Holder, who served as the AG. I'm sure he has a lot of comments about the Department of Justice these days. From February 2009 to April 2015, as the 3rd longest serving AG in U.S. history and the first African American to hold that office, Eric is an internationally recognized leader across a broad range of regulatory enforcement, criminal justice, and national security issues, and has done in his post-AG life, has done so much in terms of fair redistricting and maps. And our last scholar here is a woman that I call literally every month, if not more, trying to really understand what's going on because of the lens of history and what she understands. And that is they're all professors, Ruth Ben-Gia, who is a professor of history and Italian studies at New York University. She writes about fascism, authoritarianism, and propaganda, and the threats they present to democracies around the world. She is an advisor to Protect Democracy and to many civil and faith organizations. And by the way, they all have books, and those books are on the website, and I really commend them to you because of the teaching and the learning that they have and they can give all of us. So, these were the questions we wrote before yesterday. It does feel like what Hannah Arendt said were dark times. The constant drumbeats on the assaults, the constant assaults on democracy, on fundamental rights, on human decency and dignity, I mean, they feel overwhelming to us. So I just really kind of want you, all of you, because there's so much that we could talk about, but what, like, really kind of, what is the thing? I know there are many, and I know this is really unfair, but what's like the most kind of important thing that is really keeping you up at night? And then, by the way, the next question I will ask them is what they're doing about it. But I want you to hear from them. What's like that most, what concerns you the most? Like when you got up this morning, what really concerns you? Who wants to start? Erica, you want to start? And I'll do it this way first,
Okay.
and then that way.
Well, thank you so much, Randy. I just want to say a big shout out and thank you and hello to the AFT. And thank all the teachers and the teachers union and your locals and all of your folks for everything that you have been doing, everything you're doing here, and everything that you're going to be doing. It is needed more than ever, and thank God for you. Here's what I worried about this morning and that I've been worried about every morning for now many years. I've been worrying about what is a historical level of acute democratic backsliding in the United States of the kind that we have not seen in generations. And I am worried about the continued day-to-day consolidation of autocratic power in this country at the national level and at many state levels as well. I am worried that we will potentially miss a significant opportunity to influence the speed and scope and scale of that consolidation through the 2026 midterm elections. And I am equally concerned that we might over-index on that election when it comes to understanding the totality of ways that we can influence our political environment and bring the country to a better place. So what I see is a lively, vibrant, powerful set of actors across our civil society who are committed to making sure that the country gets to a better place. And what I hope and what I'll encourage is that we become more than the sum of our parts, that we build something new and different through what we already have, which are the ingredients to bring our country to a better place where freedom, dignity, and people's rights are respected, and that is true across the board, and that opportunities are available to everyone. We have everything we need, and all that is needed is for us to link together, express our power, and become more than the sum of our parts.
Can I just do a follow-up? Because Erica's work, Maria Stephan and Erica's work, a lot of people quote in this room. I know I was looking for Jessica Tang and Mary Catherine Ricker. You have a number, 3.5%. Could you just explain what that is, since a lot of people use it?
Sure. So you might have heard of the 3.5% rule. The 3.5% rule is just an observation, a descriptive observation, that in one study that Maria Stephan and I did from 1900 to 2006, there were no mass nonviolent movements for democracy that failed after mobilizing at least 3.5% of the population at a peak moment. Now, what I want to also, that's an exciting statistic because it suggests that those who are activated don't need to constitute the majority. They can influence easily and gain sympathy among the majority by showing their commitment and engaging in many different creative nonviolent actions. But I also want to caution against the overuse of that number as like a target for a few reasons. The first is that it's a historical observation, but it is not a prediction. It's not a prescription or a guarantee. And that since our book was published and I first was able to identify that number, there have been cases around the world where people have actually succeeded in mobilizing that level and the movement still failed. And so I think that the lesson to learn is similar in that when mass movements organize sufficient numbers, they are able to shift the loyalties of just enough people in order to influence an outcome. That is still true and is still the sort of theory of change here. And so the main thing to think about is with every action that we take, how are we mobilizing people who otherwise wouldn't necessarily be with us? So organizing others into a movement to create that threshold or kind of tipping point that would allow us to express our power in an impactful way.
Danielle.
Well, first of all, again, thank you, Randi. Thank you to all of you educators, and especially I want to call out our great social studies educators in the room. Thank you. All the work you are doing, giving these kids civic muscle, it is so important. These are dark times. For me personally, as I try to process that, my own family history matters a lot. It matters to me that my granddad helped found one of the first NAACP chapters in northern Florida in the 40s. Some of you know what northern Florida is like, right? Same thing as southern Georgia. Lynchings were on the rise at the time, so he was taking his life into his hands. My great-grandparents fought for women's right to vote. My great-granddad marched with suffragists on Boston Common in 1917. And we often forget that that year, that was a really hard year too. Woodrow Wilson had troops in the streets of D.C., right? Sound familiar? Suppressing the protests of suffragists. And they made it through, right? Dark times, and they made it through. So I know we can too. That's just the first thing I want to just say and name. You asked what keeps me up at night. It's basically this. I am a historian. Look at 18th century, 19th century, 20th century. Also look at other countries around the globe. I looked at cases of concentration of power, executive overreach, the question of what do you do about it. And as best as I can tell, it boils down to two things. Fight corruption and broaden the suffrage. Now, broaden the suffrage, that just means make sure everybody has a meaningful vote, right? Those two things, fight corruption, broaden the suffrage. We are watching corruption at unprecedented scales in our country right now. Billions of dollars that are being acquired through office being used for the sake of that. That means office is not being used to solve the problems of ordinary people. It's as simple as that. Corruption is why we don't have solutions to problems of housing, to problems of affordability, and the like. Now, about that meaningful vote, we need to be aware that 60 million Americans no longer have a meaningful vote in federal elections because of gerrymandering, because of closed primaries. 60 million Americans, that's a quarter of the electorate. All right, so fight corruption, broaden the suffrage. Now, that sounds easy, so what keeps me up at night is how do we build a tent big enough to make people power the decisive fact in a world where capital has concentrated power and is crawling all over our institutions? What is that path to that big tent? And I think, honestly, that's going to be kind of hard for us because sometimes it means we got to give up maybe some of our favorite ways of talking or some of our really pressing personal issues a little bit, like try to give a little bit in order to make that tent really big. And I don't know how to do that yet. So that's the thing that keeps me up at night.
Thank you, Danielle. General Holder, I thought of you, the first person I thought of was when I saw the Calais decision. Because you had to live through Shelby, and you predicted this. But what keeps you, and so I'm sure there's many things that keep you up at night, but what keeps you up at night?
Well, again, I want to thank you for inviting me, Randy, and I want to thank you all for being here, and thank you all for what it is that you do. You all have the most important job in our society, so you do it well, so thank you. What keeps me up at night is the way in which the midterm elections are going to be conducted. There's a ton of stuff that keeps me up at night. So this is just the one that's at kind of the front of the line. There's a whole bunch of other things. But the folks who, I'm a Democrat, I'm a partisan Democrat and proud of that. And what I worry about with regard to Trump and the Republicans is that they're going to do anything that they can, anything, to cheat, you know, to rig the election, to come up with a result that's inconsistent with the desires of the American people through gerrymandering, through voter suppression, through the deployment of ICE in certain communities, declaring an emergency of some sort to try to justify the use of troops. All these things, you know, 18 months ago might have seemed fanciful, no way that could possibly happen. I put everything on the table with regard to what these people are capable of doing, and so we've got to be prepared to respond in kind. But that's the thing that keeps me up. If it's a fair election, we're going to do fine. We're going to do fine. I think there's a wave. There's going to be a wave. The House of Representatives should come our way. We'll make great progress, I think, in state legislatures, which we need to focus on to a much greater degree than we do. The Senate is certainly in play. But I really worry, you know, if you shave 1-2% through the mechanisms that they might use, you know, voter participation by just 1-2%, that can be outcome determinative. And I worry about that in certain states. So what it is that they're going to do, and that speech that we saw last night, as crazy as it was, as error-filled as it was, could serve as the basis for, or the beginning shot, and serve as the basis for the kinds of conduct, the kinds of practices that they might try to put in place that, again, 18 months or so ago, I would have said, that's not possible. That's what keeps me up.
Thank you, General. Ruth.
So it's very moving to be here to speak with you, and thank you all for what you do every day. It's so important, so to all of you. And so as somebody who studies for many years the worst people in the world, all of this is kind of a nightmare to see it happening in our own country. I just want to get one concept out for our thinking. We think about authoritarianism as in a legalistic way, and it is that, when the executive branch destroys the rule of law and politicizes institutions. But there's something else going on, and it deserves a different definition, and it is when you either erode or diminish or destroy the rights of the many to allow the very few, this takes up from your speech, to allow the very few unheard of liberties and freedoms to plunder. And this word plunder and exploitation is key. And we're living through this right now. The plunder of institutions, the plunder of the economy, where your tax dollars are like a goodie pot for Trump to funnel to himself, plunder the environment, plunder the labor force, and plunder female bodies, so they're covering up the Epstein files. And so that keeps me up at night to be witnessing this process, because it is a process. And then more specifically, the retooling of institutions to fit the personal financial needs and psychological needs for vengeance of the leader. You see that this is called personalist rule, and Trump is doing that. So everybody's at his beck and call. There are constant loyalty tests. This is what I call moral collapse. So that keeps me up at night. And then as an educator, the destruction of truth, the demonization of all categories of people, from scientists, researchers, teachers, who deal with verifiable facts, who uphold the dignity of telling the truth. And it's been across the board an attempt to make trusted authorities, such as teachers, librarians, doctors, make them into objects of suspicion. So that removal of trust, and of course it goes with the leader stuff, because only the leader should be trusted. I alone can fix it, right? That's what he told us. So that kind of frame, but keep aware of this destroying the rights of the many so that the very few have freedoms to plunder. The Musks, the Secretary of Commerce, and Trump and his family himself.
I asked them what keeps them up at night as opposed to so much of the things that are confronting the country, because part of what authoritarians do, and also part of what Donald Trump does, whether you consider him an authoritarian or not, is the throwing out of so much stuff that people just throw up their hands and say, oh no, what are we going to, all I want to do is stay home, and for those of us who drink, have a glass of wine, or for me, some vodka.
See?
But
We knew vodka would come up.
But the question really becomes for us, and this is why I really wanted the second question to do, we, as a labor union, we have done a lot in terms of bargaining and in terms of the use of the bullhorn. We've done a lot. And as Danielle knows, Danielle is on our the Shanker Institute board, that the work of civics teachers, the work of social studies teachers, the work of elementary school teachers who also teach civic, it's really important in terms of that engagement and being able to teach kids in a developmentally appropriate way how to think and how to understand context. But the question now, in the next few months, we have effectively 100 days. And Raphael Warnock, Reverend Warnock, Senator Warnock yesterday was here, and he had actually the end of his speech, he talked about a snake near death convulsing. And it looks really scary. But that is a convulsion nearing death. And it's been something I thought about this morning waking up, because if you think about how Trump looked yesterday. So from your vantage point, you have the leadership of our union here. Almost 1.88 million people, 1.3 of whom live in a battleground state. What do you recommend? What do you think we should be doing in the next, between now and November 3rd? I'll start. Actually, you know something, General? I'm going to start with you this time, because I'm going to start with you.
Well, I think first off we have to understand that we have power. That is the thing that I think is in some ways the most important thing. That it seems that these folks are all powerful, that they have control of all of these institutions, and they do to a certain extent, but you can never forget, and if you're conversant with American history, you understand the power of individuals, the power of organizations, who are not necessarily power holders in a traditional sense. If you look at the 250th anniversary, I mean, a bunch of ragtag colonial folks decided to take on the mightiest empire in the world and form this nation. We ended slavery when that didn't seem like it was likely to happen, or at least not in that time frame. Women got the right to vote. Again, something that was not deemed to happen simply because it was its time. It happened because people fought for it. A bunch of young kids, black and white, went to the South, or from the South, and ripped down a system of American apartheid. You know, and they must have had doubts. You know, Dr. King, Diane Nash, John Lewis must have thought to themselves, can we really do this? They must have had those doubts on a Sunday evening, and yet they pushed ahead, understanding the power that they had by galvanizing people to get into the streets, to get into the voting booths. Those are the kinds of things that I think we have to do now. Understand the power that we have and then exercise it. Greg Bavino and his fascists in Minneapolis didn't leave because they accomplished their job. They got their asses kicked out of there by the people of Minneapolis who said, we don't accept this. And that, I think, is an object lesson for us to keep in mind. What is it that we do? Well, we do all the things that have been done in the past. We understand the power that we have. And then you all, given the power that you have, get more people involved in this effort. This is a numbers game. This is a numbers game. If more of us come out than on the other side, we will ultimately win. That keeps me optimistic. But there's work to be done. The fact that we have power is not in and of itself determinative. The question is, will we use that power? And that's what we have to do.
All right, so I'll jump in. I'm taking off my professor hat and putting on my citizen hat. I want to be real clear about that, okay? There's a great senator from my home state who says, don't agonize, organize. You all know how to do that. You are organizers par excellence. I know you will do that. The thing I want to ask is that in addition to working on Congress at the midterms, which are so important, and you know in those swing states what you have to do, pay attention to state elections, all right? Our state legislatures build this country. They build it for health policy, they build it for education, they build it for the election system. They will control representation and districting in 2030 through the census. Focus on state legislatures. Arizona, there's good work happening to address the voucher situation there, right? Horses out of the barn, but we got to actually control what happens with that voucher structure. We need work targeted there. Wisconsin, got to win the governor's race and got to deal with the messy legislative situation there in Wisconsin. Pennsylvania, flip the Senate. We can flip the Senate in Pennsylvania. That controls the budget in Pennsylvania. Ohio, fight the Freedom Caucus. All right, so those are the four things. OPPO, Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio. We need your work in those state legislatures. Okay.
One thing I would say, and this is so, I'm glad that you said that because, you know, too often we focus on Congress and the federal government. The reality is that on a day-to-day basis, your life is more impacted by what happens in state legislatures, state Supreme Courts, governors, than what happens here. Congress has done crap for the last, 18 months, and all the laws that we're fighting, all the things that affect our liberties in substantial ways happen at the state level. So I think that point is extremely well taken.
I love when somebody comes in and says, these states are what we really need to focus on. Ruth.
Yeah, so, you know, we have to understand our own power, respect our own power, that was said. But the flip is that we should never see these authoritarians as infallible.
Right.
They spend a lot of money and effort to boost their personality cults. That's what Trump's face everywhere, all that crap is about. And it's because they live in fear of us. And Trump is already at the bunker stage, which I call. He's talking, the Washington Post did an investigation of what has he talked about the most for the last 4 months. Well, guess what it was? His ballroom and his bunker. And the ballroom is where he gets his adulation, but the bunker is where he's going to hide. And they all, Putin, all these guys have their bunkers. And so he talks about the military hospital. That's where he's going to hide and flee. So they live in fear of us. And so we have a power. And that's why they're trying to take away our voice through taking away our vote. And so never, ever give up on elections. And I like that there's the Democracy Defender Initiative, accompanying people to vote, all these kind of mutual aid and assistant things. We're going to need to do that. And there are great precedents in our history. We don't even have to look abroad for that. So never forget your own power, and never forget that these guys live in fear of you.
And Ruth knows this because she has studied so many of them. Erica.
Yeah, so my colleague Steve Levitsky says that there are 3 places that we need to fight back against democratic backsliding: in the courts, in the streets, and at the polls. I would add in the pocketbook and in the boardroom. And the polls are the place where everybody over 18 who's a citizen in this country gets to express in a popular way their views about where we are headed. And they can do that in their local elections, in their state elections, and in our federal elections. And in situations where we anticipate a contested result, the more decisive the result, the better. And so this is a very, and what we need to do is not forget those other domains in which authoritarian consolidation is also happening: in the courts, in the streets, in boardrooms, and in the pocketbook.
Committee launched yet another investigation, this time over the book, Why Fascists Fear Teachers. This investigation is based on a deeply flawed report produced by the notorious anti-union that many of you know, anti-union outfit, the Freedom Foundation. Now, we have already debunked these false claims. I published, as many of you know, Why Fascists Fear Teachers in partnership with the AFT, and half of the proceeds, actually more than half, but half of the proceeds are going to the union's education, not-for-profit, and to the Disaster Relief Fund. But it is troubling that the congressional and any congressional investigation can be triggered by something so biased, so flawed, so inaccurate, but that is the world we live in. And so we will handle this investigation like we have handled the other four, and we have confidence that it will end exactly like the others with nothing to show for it. But I wanted to make clear, since it happened last week, the situation right now. So thank you. So let's go to our political resolutions in that committee and start with talking about what I talked about yesterday in terms of what we need to do. I don't want to repeat the attacks on democracy, the rule of law, our freedoms, our institutions that hold us together. Really, truly, and that's why I asked them the last question. The question is really simple. What are we going to do about this? And none of us came to this convention simply to understand the moment. We came to shape it. So the election isn't something in the distant future. You heard Hakeem Jeffries yesterday. It's 109 days away. And in some states, voting begins in about 50 days. So the window to act is already opening, and the stakes could not be higher. As I said yesterday, just 3 seats determine control of the U.S. House, and 4 seats determine control of the U.S. Senate, and whether there will be any meaningful check on future Supreme Court appointments or on future judges. These elections will probably be close, and in close elections, people who are organized really make a difference. So that's why it's not theoretical. You just heard this panel, you see what is happening. So AFT members, as I again said yesterday, really can help make a difference. The numbers that are really stark to me are that we have more than 1,000 members and householders in 86 critical congressional districts in 30 states. And these are the districts that will decide the control of the House. Right now, we understand through Cook report, there are 26 vulnerable Dems, there are 23 vulnerable Republicans, but 86 districts will control this. We have 1,000 members or householders in those districts. We also have, and I said this yesterday, 464,000 members or householders in the 7 top U.S. Senate battleground races. And in terms of the critical gubernatorial races, we have 600,000 members and householders. So when you true that up, we have 1.3 of our 1.875 members and family members in these races. So if we don't engage, how can we expect a different result? That's why organizing this year is so important. And that's why this plan of action, the AFT 2026 political program, is really important. So the 2 ports, again, as I said yesterday, one is the Count Me In initiative. This is the AFT's battleground program. It's part of the broader labor movement's electoral effort, and that's why I'm so glad that Liz was here yesterday. And labor's goal is really ambitious: 2 million new union voters. And so our share of that is 200,000. We can actually do it, but we really do need every one of our affiliates to do its part. So that's why when we put that number out, 28,000 volunteers, this is what it means in real speak. In battleground races, affiliates identify a local union coordinator. And every battleground affiliate we're asking you, a member-to-member program within AFT and AFL-CIO. And many of you do this already, and we are not doing separate programs for states and locals and for congressional. We can do them together. We recruit 28,000 volunteers nationwide, and we ask every affiliate what that really means. Is every affiliate to commit to at least 1.5% of its membership, less than 2% to this effort? And if you're battlegrounds, not on the sidelines, we have virtual opportunities so every local can help elect leaders who share our values. And we also have lots of state and local office holders who are being elected, like Taylor Remmett, who's going to be here on Sunday from Texas. Who would have thought it was because of us that he won that election a few months ago in a deep red district? So that is number one. And then there's number two. I am not going to change shirts on the podium, sorry. And that is Democracy Defenders. And you heard Ruth refer to that before. And we're launching Democracy Defenders today. Now, our resistance committee, led by Todd Wolfson and by Jessica Tang, have really pushed us to do this, as have our incredible COPE committee. And Democracy Defenders are AFT members who commit to helping voters get the information, get the protection they need to cast their ballots free from intimidation and to have those ballots counted. You just heard from an election officer on mic one, I did not know he was going to do this, remind people that we have to get people who get mail-in ballots to send them in. That's why one of the things we do is called, I hate these names that we use, a ballot chase program. But it is a way of reminding people who've gotten a mail-in ballot, send your ballot in. So the job of the Democracy Defenders, it's going to be to recruit fellow members. It's going to be to help people register and make a voting plan. It's going to be to share trusted information. This is kind of the job of everybody. Share trusted information and navigate problems. Connect. We got a lot of community partners who are also doing Get Out the Vote. And a lot of them are now going to be targeted by the Trump administration, like this long-term Getting Out the Vote and Registering the Vote program in Ohio, whose doors were just busted in and their documents subpoenaed to try to intimidate them. Why in Ohio? Because Amy Acton and Sherrod Brown are really close and vying for Senate and for governor. So we got to stand up against intimidation and disinformation, and we got to be visible from early voting to the final count, which is why this has to be union work from the day this convention ends, or from you going and signing up in our booths in the hub. So here's what we're asking from every affiliate. Remember, we asked about what to do in terms of a local captain for the races themselves. But when it comes to democracy defense, we need a democracy defense captain. And we need each of these captains to recruit at least 10 additional members, because we need to get to 5,000. Be great if we get to more, but we need to get to 5,000 by the end of September. Labor itself needs to get to 50,000. We are meeting all day next Wednesday, all the labor leaders of the country, to plan this plan, because we really need to start this now. We're going to have orientations and trainings through the election season. And the last thing I'll say is, you're not doing this alone. No one can do everything. We all have to do something. The time is now. I don't know how to say it more urgently than I did yesterday. I know we can change the trajectory, but we need you. We need our members to do it. So today we're asking you to make that commitment. We're asking you everything we talked about, everything I talked about yesterday, everything we're going to talk about during this convention. It really does depend on whether we show up. You are trusted emissaries. People trust you. That is why the right wing fights us so much. That is why we have grown so much. People trust us. They trust you. And it's within our grasp. So I'm going to ask the chair of AFT's Political Action Committee, the president of the New York State United Teachers, Melinda Person, to join me on stage. She's here already, and tell us what their plans are as we move towards November.
Thank you, Randy. I've been thinking a lot about what this moment demands of us. Not what it demands of politicians, not what it demands of candidates, what it demands of us. 2 years ago, I came to this convention filled with hope. I was really excited about the election. I believed we were on the verge of opening a new and beautiful chapter for our country. Today, if I'm being honest, I'm angry. I'm angry because public education has become a political punching bag instead of a national priority. I'm angry when children are afraid to come to school because they're worried an ICE raid could tear their family apart. I'm angry when LGBTQ+ people are told they don't belong or don't deserve the same respect and dignity as everyone else. I'm angry when diversity, equity, and inclusion, values that simply say every child deserves an opportunity to succeed, are treated like dirty words instead of fundamental American values. And I am angry because too many people are working harder than ever and still wondering whether they're going to get ahead. But here's what I've learned about anger. Anger by itself does not change anything. Action does. History is a way of asking ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Every generation reaches a moment when sitting on the sidelines is no longer an option. I believe this is one of those moments. The question isn't whether the stakes are high. You've heard all about that this morning. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And here at NYSIT, we've already answered that question. Earlier this year, we made a decision that required courage. We jumped into a competitive Democratic primary in New York's 17th congressional district, one of the most competitive races in the country. We did not wait to see where the political winds were blowing. We backed a former public school student, an Army veteran and public servant, because we believed she was the right leader for her community. And I want Kate Conley, yes, I want to shout out Carol Lyons, Sam Rosato Ciriello, Florence McHugh, our leaders on the ground who led the charge for that race. We chose a winner and we organized. Our members knocked doors, they made calls, they sent texts. We had thousands of conversations with voters. And together we helped elect Kate Conley for the Democratic nomination. Now, that was not the end of the campaign. That was just the beginning, because now the real work begins, not just in New York, but across the country. We need to flip just 3 House seats to take it back. New York is home to 1, possibly 2 of the races that can make that difference. We understand the responsibility that comes with that, and we are ready to meet it. But NYSET's reach doesn't stop at our state borders. Our members and our retirees live in battleground states across the country: New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, North Carolina, Florida, and beyond. They vote there, they organize there, they volunteer there. So when we say NYSET is all in, we don't just mean New York. We're bringing the strength of 700,000 members to this fight wherever they're needed. So today, I do not come with a warning, I come with a commitment. To President Weingarten, to every AFT affiliate, and to every member in this room, count on NYSET. You can count on our locals, you can count on UFT, you can count on UUP, you can count on PSC, you can count on our retirees. We will knock the doors, we will make the calls, we'll send the texts, we will train our volunteers, we invest in our people, we will invest our resources and our energy, and we proudly commit to filling 14,000 of those volunteer shifts between now and Election Day. Because solidarity, it is not measured by the speeches we give, it is measured by the work we are willing to do. We are ready to do that work. Count us in. And now we're going to hear from some of my colleagues from the COPE committee. Lakia Wilson-Lumpkins, let's hear from you at microphone 2.
Good afternoon. As president of the Detroit Federation of Teachers, I proudly support Randi, the COPE committee, and AFT's Count on Me In member-to-member program, because every election matters. Michigan may once have been considered a blue state, but today we are a blurple state. And we refuse to take a single voter or a single vote for granted. And that is why Detroit Federation of Teachers is committed to helping AFT reach its national goal of recruiting 28,000 volunteers across the country. We know the power of community. This is because we work alongside churches, sororities, fraternities, the NAACP, and other community partners. We will educate and engage our members, their families, and our communities in this work. And as the old school would say it, I double dog dare you and your locals, democracy defenders, to do more than meet AFT's goal of recruiting 5,000 election protection volunteers. Go beyond it. Don't recruit 10 people. Recruit 15, recruit 20. Bring more members, friends, and neighbors into this movement to protect the freedom, to protect the vote, and safeguard our democracy. Together, let's not just hope for change, let's organize for it and make it happen.
Jessica Tang from Massachusetts at microphone 3.
At the AFT's Resistance Committee, we've been closely tracking the escalating threats to our democracy. And as we have heard this morning, we know what's at stake. We saw what happened last night. We know that our free and fair elections are at risk. And in Massachusetts this past week, we learned that Boston and New Bedford will be getting DOJ observers. In normal times, it wouldn't be a concern, but these are not normal times. There's an orchestrated effort coming from the White House and its allies to undermine the democratic process. It's using ICE or law enforcement in communities of color to intimidate voters. It's purging voter rolls, spreading misinformation about who can vote or where to vote. We know here in DC, armed troops have been standing next to ballot drop boxes. And we know a likely scenario is that the White House will claim fraud in places where Democrats win and refuse to seat them. And that's why we know we have to do everything in our power to get out the vote and win by indisputable margins, protect our voters, and ensure a safe transfer of power. And we must succeed. And that is why, on behalf of AFT Massachusetts, I'm committing to support the Count Me In and Democracy Defenders programs. For us, 1.5 is 375 people, and that is a minimum we are committing to, but we are aiming for the 3.5% and more, and so we accept your double dare challenge, Lakia. We might be a small state, but we always aim to punch above our weight, and in Massachusetts, we have the most competitive elections, but we know our members are trusted messengers, and we plan to deploy them. We have a long history of supporting AFT and labor political programs to make a difference, whether member to member in Massachusetts, virtual phone banks, or sending activists to battleground states like New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, and Maine. And no matter if we are in a red, purple, or blue state, we have an obligation to ensure our electorate is informed and ensure every eligible voter can vote and have their vote counted. And we have to win. As our Senator Elizabeth Warren says, we have a plan for that, and we need our members to join the Count Me In and Democracy Defenders program to execute that plan. So please do sign up for one of the orientations and get your local members involved too.
Arthur Steinberg from the great state of Pennsylvania at microphone 6.
The AFT Count Me In program and Defenders of Democracy are no-brainers for the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers. We're already at that 1.5%. So, Jessica, we're going to accept your challenge and exceed the 3.5%. We have a long history of engaging with our communities, our labor partners, and most importantly, our parents. We have a robust program already, so this will just allow us to expand what we've been doing and make sure that we can make this battleground state the key to winning both our statewide elections and nationally. Over 1/3 of the registered voters in the state of Pennsylvania live in the Philadelphia region, and over half of our membership lives in those state Senate seats that were mentioned in the prior panel. We will work in conjunction with AFT Pennsylvania, a statewide affiliate, to make sure that we flip these seats and then remind everybody that governing goes through Pennsylvania. As far as Defenders of Democracy goes, we have been plaintiffs on a number of the cases that our governor has brought and challenged the Trump administration on, and by the way, has won every single one. We will continue to do that as well. Philadelphia is a union town, and one thing we know what happens when we fight, win, and we will fight and we will win and prevail in this. Thank you.
Thank you, AFT. Can we count you in?
Okay. I know I am mindful of the time, but I am going to try to see if we can do at least one or two of the